"Grandpa, don't marry Miss Vanessa. She hurts Mommy." My 3-year-old grandson whispered those words less than an hour before I was supposed to marry Vanessa Langford in front of 400 guests. Then Noah Caldwell pushed a tablet into my hands. "I have a movie." 43 seconds later, I knew my wedding was a trap. My name is William Prescott. I'm 65, and until that morning I believed Vanessa had rescued me from the loneliest years of my life. If you've ever trusted someone with your heart, your home, and your family, stay with me, because one child was about to expose what 2 adults had spent months hiding. Prescott Estate had been awake since sunrise. White roses covered the terrace, caterers filled the kitchen, and musicians were preparing beside the lawn. Vanessa wanted everything perfect. I felt calm until Noah found me in the east hallway, wearing a tiny navy suit with one shoelace dragging behind him. "Grandpa," he said, tugging my sleeve, "Mommy cries a lot." I crouched. "What do you mean?" He glanced toward the stairs. "Miss Vanessa hurts Mommy." His mother, Rachel Prescott, was my only daughter. For months, her husband, Adrian Caldwell, had told me Rachel was exhausted and emotionally unstable. Rachel herself kept saying she was fine, so I had believed him. "How does Vanessa hurt her?" Noah frowned, then held out his tablet. "I made a movie." The video showed a shaky view from beneath a table in Adrian's office. I heard Adrian first. Once he signs at the reception, he won't even know what he approved. Vanessa answered, "Rachel is already isolated. Keep her uncertain, keep William distracted, and by the time either of them understands, it'll be done." The clip ended. Noah looked at me. "Was that bad?" I forced my voice to stay gentle. "You did nothing wrong. Can Grandpa keep this for a while?" He nodded. I kissed his forehead, sent him with a trusted nanny, and locked myself in my study. I played the recording 3 times. Same voices, same words, same nightmare. I wanted to storm upstairs and confront Vanessa, but 40 years in business had taught me one rule: never confront people while they still know more than you do. So I made 4 calls. First, Helen Carter, my house manager of 20 years. "Helen, come to my study alone. Bring every note you've kept about Vanessa." She went silent. "You know, I know enough to start asking." Second, my brother Samuel. "Get here early. Tell nobody why." Third, Daniel Brooks, the former federal officer who ran estate security. "Preserve every camera record from the last 12 months. No deletions, no outside access, and don't alert Adrian." Understood. Fourth, Dr. Jonathan Reed, our family physician and one of my oldest friends. "Jonathan, I need you here before the ceremony. It concerns Rachel." His voice changed. "I'll be there." At 9:17, Helen entered carrying a black notebook. "Mr. Prescott, I've been documenting Vanessa for almost a year." She opened it. Dates, missing keys, questions about account access, insurance beneficiaries, succession plans, and who could authorize transfers if I became incapacitated. "Why didn't you tell me?" Helen swallowed. "Because after Eleanor died, you finally smiled again. I needed proof before I became the person who took that away." Hearing my late wife's name cut through me. Outside my window, workers were arranging chairs for 400 people who thought they were coming to watch me begin a new life. I closed the notebook. "The wedding continues." Helen stared at me. "Sir? Vanessa and Adrian cannot know we found anything." I picked up Noah's tablet. "If they want a ceremony, they'll get one. But before I say I do, I'm going to learn exactly what they plan to make me sign, what they've done to Rachel, and how long they've been doing it." By the time Helen left my study, the man who had planned to get married that afternoon was gone. In his place was the man I had been before grief made me careless. 40 years earlier, I had arrived in Montana with $23, a borrowed pickup, and Eleanor Prescott sitting beside me saying, "If you're willing to build it, I'm willing to struggle with you." We started with a neglected parcel outside Bozeman and a house whose roof leaked whenever the wind came from the west. I worked construction during the day and studied property deals at night. Eleanor kept our books at the kitchen table, challenged every reckless idea I had, and somehow made poverty feel temporary. When Prescott Holdings finally became profitable, I wanted to buy her jewelry. She asked for a better school district for the daughter we hoped to have someday. That was Eleanor. Rachel was born 3 years later, and everything we built after that, had her future written into it. By my 60s, Prescott Holdings owned properties, and Prescott Estate had become the place where our family gathered for birthdays, Christmas mornings, and summer dinners. But none of it prepared me for losing Eleanor. In 2022, pancreatic cancer took the strongest person I had ever known. Near the end, when speaking exhausted her, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't turn this house into a museum, Will. Keep living." I promised her I would. After the funeral, I discovered how difficult that promise was. I could negotiate huge contracts, yet I couldn't eat breakfast alone without staring at Eleanor's empty chair. Rachel visited constantly at first, but she had Adrian, Noah, and her own life. I told everyone I was fine because successful men learn to make loneliness look like privacy. 5 months later, I met Vanessa Langford at a charity dinner. She didn't chase me across the room or ask about Prescott Holdings. She stood beside an architectural display and said, "Everyone is admiring the new building. I like the old stonework better." That made me laugh. We talked for nearly an hour. Vanessa told me she was a widow too. Her husband, Richard Langford, a property developer, had died years earlier. She understood the strange guilt of laughing after loss, an empty bed, and the way friends eventually stop asking whether you're all right because they want the answer to become yes. "People think grief ends," she told me. "It doesn't. You just learn where to put it." Vanessa never asked me to remove Eleanor's photographs. Not then. She asked about her instead. She listened while I described our first house, Rachel's childhood, and the years when Eleanor and I counted every dollar. When Vanessa began visiting Prescott Estate, she complimented the garden Eleanor had designed and told me, "You don't erase a great love to make room for another one." Those words dismantled every defense I still had. Rachel was polite but distant. Adrian was warmer. "Dad, you deserve this," he told me one evening, raising his glass toward Vanessa. I didn't notice how quickly the two of them became comfortable around each other. I didn't notice Vanessa learning which doors required keys, which employees handled financial mail, or when I met with attorneys. I saw a woman helping me keep my promise to Eleanor. Helen Carter saw something else. Looking back now, the warning signs weren't hidden. I was simply interpreting each one through the loneliness Vanessa had learned to soothe. Standing in my study on my wedding morning with Noah's tablet in my hand, I finally understood the cruelest part of deception. Vanessa had not forced her way into my life. I had opened the door because she had first convinced me she respected everything on the other side of it. The first time Helen Carter told me she was afraid of Vanessa, I almost laughed. It was 8 months before the wedding. Helen found me in the library and closed the door. "Mr. Prescott, why does Miss Langford need to know who can access your financial accounts?" I looked up. Helen explained that Vanessa had been asking employees questions that sounded harmless alone. Who collected my banking mail, where spare keys were kept, which attorney handled succession planning, who could authorize payments if I became ill, and whether Rachel remained on my insurance policies. "Maybe she's trying to understand how the household works," I said. Helen didn't argue. "Maybe. That's why I'm writing things down instead of accusing her." I should have listened. Vanessa could make every intrusion sound like concern. Questions about Rachel's future at Prescott Holdings became compliments. "Your daughter must be proud you'll trust her with all this." I heard affection. Helen heard reconnaissance. Her black notebook eventually became a map of Vanessa's behavior. March 8. Asked where William keeps personal mail. March 21. Requested access to the West Office keys. April 4. Questioned an assistant about insurance beneficiaries. April 19. Asked whether William's signature alone could authorize property transfers. May 2. Entered his study while he was away and claimed she needed a charger. On my wedding morning, I read those entries while Noah's video echoed in my head. "Keep William distracted." Suddenly, nothing looked random. "Did she ask about Rachel?" I said. Helen's expression tightened. "Often." Especially after Adrian began saying Rachel was emotionally unstable. What did she want to know? Whether Rachel still attended company meetings, whether she could sign documents, whether you'd change your succession plan if you believed she couldn't handle pressure. My stomach turned. Vanessa hadn't only been studying my assets. She had been studying the distance between me and my daughter. Then Helen showed me a security image Daniel Brooks had preserved months earlier. It showed Vanessa outside my private office at 1:14 a.m., barefoot, holding a small flashlight. Why wasn't I told? Daniel told me. We couldn't prove she entered. And every suspicious thing still had an innocent explanation. I couldn't blame them. I had supplied most of those explanations myself. Helen opened to another page. Vanessa had once asked her to remove Eleanor's portrait from the main hall. When Helen refused without my approval, Vanessa smiled and said, "Eventually this house has to understand it has a new woman." Later, Vanessa asked me herself, gently, and I agreed to move the portrait upstairs because I didn't want my future wife living beneath the shadow of my past. Now the gesture felt different. She hadn't been making room for herself. She had been testing how much of Eleanor she could erase without resistance. Outside, workers carried white flowers toward the terrace. I closed the notebook. "Don't change your behavior. If she asks why you were here, tell her we discussed reception staffing. And if she suspects something, smile." Helen gave me a grim little smile. "I've learned that from her." Before she left, I stopped her. "From now on, nothing gets moved, copied, signed, transferred, or destroyed without Daniel knowing." She nodded. I looked once more at the image of Vanessa outside my office after midnight. Noah's 43-second video had proved a conspiracy existed. Helen's notebook was beginning to show me how carefully Vanessa had built it and how long I had been helping her by refusing to see it. While Vanessa was learning the layout of my estate, Adrian Caldwell was doing something more dangerous, teaching me not to trust my own daughter. Rachel had once been the sharpest person in any room. Before Noah was born, she was a director at a commercial real estate firm. Then, slowly, she changed. She stopped attending company dinners, canceled lunches with friends, and rarely called me without Adrian nearby. When I asked him what was wrong, he sighed like a patient husband carrying a private burden. "Rachel gets overwhelmed, William. I'm trying not to embarrass her." He showed me short videos of her crying in the kitchen or shouting after sleepless nights. Every clip began after the argument had already started. I never asked what happened before he pressed record. I accepted the story he gave me. My daughter was becoming unstable. On my wedding morning, Helen Carter opened her notebook to a section marked Rachel. One entry described Vanessa intercepting Rachel after she asked to speak with me alone. Another recorded Adrian telling staff not to give Rachel financial documents because stress confused her. A third noted Vanessa asking whether I had considered removing Rachel from future decisions at Prescott Holdings. "Why didn't Rachel tell me?" I asked. Helen looked at me sadly. "I think she tried. I remembered a dinner 6 months earlier. Rachel had followed me into the library and whispered, 'Dad, something about Vanessa and Adrian isn't right.'" Before she could explain, Adrian appeared with Noah and laughed. "There you are. Your mom's having one of her conspiracy nights." Rachel's face went blank. I touched her shoulder and said, "Get some sleep, sweetheart." I thought I was comforting her. I had actually dismissed her. Daniel Brooks entered my study carrying security records. Adrian's visits to Prescott Estate had increased whenever I traveled. Several times, he entered after Rachel believed he was at business meetings. Daniel pointed to another timestamp. "This is the night Rachel left here crying." The footage showed Rachel walking toward her car. Vanessa followed, stopped her near the driveway, and spoke to her for 7 minutes. There was no audio, but Rachel's posture changed. She began with her shoulders squared. By the end, she was staring at the ground. Adrian arrived minutes later and drove her away. "Find Rachel," I said, quietly. "I need her alone." Daniel returned 20 minutes later. "She's with Noah in the guest wing. Adrian told her not to leave until family photographs." My jaw tightened. I wanted to confront him immediately, but if I did, I could destroy evidence we hadn't found yet. I called Rachel instead. She answered on the 4th ring. "Dad, are you alone?" A pause. "Yes." "Then listen carefully. Whatever you tried to tell me before, I should have listened. I believe you." Then I heard her breathing break. "Dad, I'm scared." Those 3 words erased every excuse I had made for Adrian. "Of him?" I asked. "Of both of them." I closed my eyes. "Don't confront anyone. Stay with Noah. Daniel is nearby, and nobody is taking you anywhere. Doctor. Jonathan Reed is coming too." "Why?" "Because today I'm going to stop guessing," Rachel whispered. If Vanessa knows I talked to you, she'll say I'm trying to ruin your wedding. There may not be a wedding. Silence. Then Rachel said, Dad, Vanessa isn't just helping Adrian. They've been planning this together for a long time. I looked at Helen and Daniel. Noah's 43-second video had shown me the conspiracy existed. Rachel had just confirmed it had roots. Now I needed to know what they had done to keep my daughter frightened and isolated, and what they planned to gain when I signed whatever papers they intended to put in front of me. The question that changed everything was not whether Vanessa had lied to me. It was whether she had done this before. Helen Carter returned to my study carrying an old newspaper clipping in a plastic folder. I found this months ago in a storage box Vanessa asked me to throw away, she said. The headline concerned Richard Langford, Vanessa's late husband, a wealthy commercial property developer in Atlanta. He had died unexpectedly only 14 months after marrying her. The article said Richard changed parts of his estate plan shortly before his death. Authorities investigated the circumstances but filed no charges. I looked at Helen. Why keep this? Because one strange question is gossip. 10 strange questions become a pattern. Samuel had helped her obtain public records. Richard's death proved nothing criminal, and I refused to pretend otherwise. But the timing mattered. So did the estate changes and Vanessa's current obsession with my beneficiaries, signature authority, succession plan, and private records. We do not accuse her of killing anyone, I said. Not without evidence. Helen nodded. Agreed. But you needed to know what happened around the last wealthy man she married. My brother Samuel entered minutes later. Richard owned several valuable developments. After the marriage, his planning documents changed. Vanessa benefited. There was an inquiry after his death, but it closed without charges. Then that's all we say. Facts only. Daniel Brooks stepped in with another discovery. Security logs showed Vanessa repeatedly entering the administrative wing late at night when I was traveling. Twice, Adrian arrived within an hour of her. Daniel couldn't prove what they discussed, but the pattern matched Helen's notebook. Then Rachel texted me, Dad, please don't let Adrian know I'm talking to you. I called immediately. Rachel, I need the truth, not what you think will protect me. She began crying. Vanessa told me if I kept questioning Adrian, she'd make sure everyone believed I was unstable. She said you'd already lost Mom and I shouldn't be selfish enough to destroy your second chance. My hand tightened around the phone. Did Adrian hear her? Yes. What did he do? Nothing. He just stood there. Rachel took a breath. I once walked into Adrian's office and found them standing over documents from Prescott Holdings. Vanessa said they were planning a surprise for you. When I asked Adrian later, he told me I was imagining things again. I looked at Daniel. Do we know what documents? Not yet. Find out. Dr. Jonathan Reed arrived before noon and met Rachel privately with her consent. When he came downstairs, he respected her confidentiality. But Rachel authorized him to tell me one thing. Her distress was real, and she needed safety, support, and distance from the people pressuring her. That was enough. Outside, guests were beginning to arrive. Music drifted through the windows. Vanessa texted, "Can't wait to become Mrs. Prescott." I stared at the message, then at Richard Langford's clipping. I still didn't know whether his death had any connection to Vanessa beyond what public records showed, and I would not invent one. But I knew the woman waiting to marry me had studied my assets, helped isolate my daughter, entered restricted parts of my home, and appeared in a video discussing papers she expected me to sign without reading. I placed the clipping in our evidence file. Richard's story is a warning, not an accusation, I said. We beat Vanessa and Adrian with what we can prove. Samuel nodded. Then what do we prove next? I looked toward the locked document room. We find out exactly what Adrian has been doing with my company and why he needed my signature today. By noon, Daniel Brooks had the answer I had been dreading. Adrian Caldwell had not simply been borrowing my name in conversation. He had been using it as currency. Daniel placed 3 folders on my desk. These are loans and investment agreements tied to Caldwell Consulting LLC. Adrian told people Prescott Holdings was standing behind him. I opened the first file. Charles Bennett, a commercial real estate investor, had advanced Adrian money after being told I supported the project. My signature was nowhere on the agreements, but emails repeatedly referred to Williams' backing and Prescott participation. How much? I asked. Enough that if these deals fail, people will come looking to you before they look at him. My phone rang. Charles Bennett, I answered. William, I heard you were asking questions. I am now. Did Adrian tell you I guaranteed his deal? Charles went quiet. He said you preferred to stay off the paperwork until closing, but that Prescott Holdings was behind it. I never approved a dollar. Charles swore under his breath. Then he used your reputation to get me in the room. Save every email, text, proposal, and voicemail. Bring copies to the estate. Come with your attorney. Today, I looked through the window at white chairs filling with wedding guests. Especially today. Daniel opened the second folder. Security footage showed Adrian entering the private document room at 11:43 p.m., 6 weeks earlier with a man Daniel identified as a legal advisor. Adrian had no authorization to bring anyone inside. The camera outside the room captured them, leaving 47 minutes later carrying notes. Can we tell what they examined? I asked. Access logs show the cabinet containing Prescott Holdings operating agreements, succession documents, and property control provisions was opened. My stomach tightened. Noah's video suddenly made terrible sense. Once he signs at the reception, he won't even know what he approved. They were studying what they needed to change, I said. Daniel nodded. That's my concern. I called my corporate attorney and ordered an immediate freeze on non-essential changes, transfers, new authorizations, and amendments involving Prescott Holdings. Nothing moves today without direct verbal confirmation from me and a second review, I said. Then I instructed Daniel to preserve the original security files and create copies. No edited clips. No assumptions. Evidence only. At 12:26, Samuel came in carrying a draft document he had found among papers prepared for the reception. It was disguised inside a stack labeled Post-Wedding Administrative Updates. One provision would have expanded authority over certain family-controlled assets if I signed the package without reading every attachment. Adrian's name appeared in the supporting structure. Is this what the video meant? Samuel asked. Maybe, I said. We let the attorneys establish exactly what it does. Then Helen entered. Pale. Mr. Prescott, there's something else. Vanessa asked me this morning whether the reception documents had been placed beside your champagne glass. Nobody spoke. What did you tell her? That I assumed the coordinator handled them. Good. Keep assuming. I checked the time. Guests were arriving faster now. Somewhere upstairs, Vanessa was putting on the dress she expected to wear while becoming Mrs. Prescott. Somewhere else, Adrian believed months of isolation, borrowed credibility, and midnight research were about to pay off with one distracted signature. I picked up Noah's tablet and looked at the frozen image from beneath Adrian's desk. They thought the wedding was their deadline. They were wrong. It had become mine. The deeper we looked, the clearer it became that Adrian wasn't the only one moving money. At 12:41, Helen Carter returned with bank statements from the joint checking account Vanessa had persuaded me to open 9 months earlier. I should have shown you sooner, she said. Show me now. She placed the statements beside Daniel's files. The withdrawals weren't dramatic enough to attract attention individually. $8,400, $9,700, $7,900, $9,200. Again and again, money had moved in amounts small enough to look ordinary inside an account that routinely handled estate expenses. Daniel totaled the transfers. Nearly $240,000. Where did it go? I asked. An account connected to one of Vanessa's relatives in Baton Rouge, he said. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Vanessa had always explained the withdrawals as wedding deposits, charitable commitments, household purchases, or expenses she'd reimburse. I had trusted her because checking every transaction felt insulting to the woman I intended to marry. She had turned that trust into camouflage. Preserve the statements and have counsel verify the destination, I said. Nobody accuses anyone of theft until we know exactly what authority she had and where every dollar went. Daniel nodded. Evidence, not rage. That rule was becoming the only thing holding me together. Helen hesitated before opening another folder. Inside were photographs of rooms throughout Prescott Estate taken months apart. Eleanor's wedding portrait had disappeared from the main hall. Her silver picture frames had been moved from the library. The vase she loved had been boxed away. Even the handwritten recipe cards she kept near the kitchen had been relocated to storage. Each change had seemed insignificant when Vanessa explained it separately. "We're making the house ours, William. You shouldn't have to live inside a shrine. Eleanor would want you to move forward." Now I saw the pattern. Vanessa hadn't demanded that I erase my wife. She had asked for one tiny surrender at a time, until the woman who helped build this life was becoming invisible inside her own home. I walked upstairs to the storage room and found Eleanor's portrait wrapped in cloth behind 2 boxes. I carried it downstairs myself. Helen watched me return it to the main hall. "Leave it there," I said. "Forever." My phone buzzed. "Vanessa, where are you?" "Photographer needs us in 20 minutes, I replied, handling a last-minute business issue. "Can't wait to see you." The lie tasted bitter, but I needed her calm. Then Rachel entered the hall. She stopped when she saw her mother's portrait restored. Her eyes filled immediately. "Dad, I should never have moved it." She touched the frame. "Vanessa told me you wanted Mom's things gone because they were keeping you trapped." I turned toward her. "She told me you were uncomfortable seeing them." Rachel stared at me. There it was again. Vanessa had been carrying different stories between us, making each of us believe the other wanted the distance. "She was separating us," Rachel whispered. "Yes." Rachel looked toward the stairs, and Adrian helped her. Before I could answer, Daniel approached with another update. Charles Bennett had arrived with his attorney, and 2 other business contacts were bringing records showing Adrian had invoked my name to secure credibility for deals I had never approved. My corporate attorney had also reviewed the reception paperwork Samuel found. His preliminary conclusion was enough to chill me. Buried among routine documents were provisions that could materially expand control over family assets if executed. "So, the champagne wasn't for celebrating," I said. Daniel's jaw tightened. "It looks like they expected you to sign while distracted." I looked at the clock. The ceremony was getting closer. Nearly 400 guests were now on my property. Vanessa thought she was minutes away from becoming my wife. Adrian thought I still believed my daughter was unstable. Neither knew I had the bank records, the security footage, the business partners, the hidden documents, Helen's notebook, Rachel's account, and Noah's 43 seconds of truth. I turned to Daniel. "Nobody stops the ceremony." Rachel stared at me. "Dad, you're still going out there?" "Yes." I looked at Eleanor's portrait, then toward the terrace. "They spent months building this trap in private. I'm going to let them walk into it in public." Rachel waited until Daniel Brooks left before she spoke. "Dad, there's something I haven't told you." She took Noah's tablet from my hand. "The video wasn't the first time I heard Vanessa and Adrian talking about you. 3 months earlier, Rachel had gone to Adrian's office after Noah left a toy there. The door was partly open. Vanessa stood beside Adrian's desk over documents from Prescott Holdings. Rachel heard her say, "William trusts you because you're family. Keep it that way until after the wedding." When Rachel entered, both stopped talking. Vanessa smiled and claimed they were planning a surprise for me. Later, Rachel confronted Adrian. He denied Vanessa had even been there. When Rachel insisted, he called her confused. The next morning he apologized, brought flowers, and suggested she was exhausted. "That became the pattern," Rachel said. "He'd deny something I saw, wait until I got angry, then record me after I started crying. Those are the videos he showed you." Shame hit me harder than anger. I believed him. "I know," Rachel continued. Adrian gradually separated her from friends. If she planned lunch, Noah suddenly needed something. If she wanted to visit me alone, Adrian said I was busy with Vanessa. If she questioned money, he called her paranoid. Then Vanessa reinforced the same message. "She told me you were worried about my stability. She said if I kept upsetting you, you might remove me from Prescott Holdings. I never said that. I know that now." Her voice cracked. "They made each of us believe the other had stopped trusting us." Then she told me why she had finally gone silent. Rachel once confronted Vanessa and threatened to tell me about the secret meetings with Adrian. Vanessa stepped close and said, "Your father barely survived losing Eleanor. Do you really want to destroy his second chance?" When Rachel refused to back down, Vanessa mentioned Adrian's videos. She said if I started a custody fight, those recordings could be used to make people question whether I should have Noah. My hands went cold. "Adrian knew?" Rachel nodded. "He was standing in the doorway." "What did he say?" Maybe you should listen for once. I had spent months believing Adrian was protecting Rachel from herself. He had actually helped convince her that telling the truth could cost her son. Why tell me today? Rachel looked toward the garden. Because Noah heard them. I stayed quiet to protect him, and he ended up protecting me. She started crying. I held my daughter. Listen to me. You are not ruining my wedding. You are not ruining my life. The people who built this lie are responsible for what happens when it collapses. Dr. Jonathan Reed joined us moments later. With Rachel's permission, he confirmed only what he could responsibly say. Her distress was real. She needed safety and independent support, and continued isolation would not help her. That was enough. We weren't going to exaggerate anything. Every person helping me understood the rule now. Facts only. Rachel looked at the files covering my desk. What are you going to do? I touched Noah's tablet. Let them believe they won until the last possible minute. And then? Then you won't have to convince anyone. They'll hear Vanessa and Adrian themselves. Outside, musicians began the final sound check. The ceremony was less than an hour away. Rachel squeezed my hand. Dad, there's one more thing. The papers aren't the end of it. Vanessa told Adrian that once the wedding was legal, you'd be easier to manage because questioning her afterward would mean admitting you'd made a mistake. I looked through the window at 400 chairs. Vanessa had counted on my pride. She believed I would protect the appearance of a perfect wedding rather than admit I'd trusted the wrong woman. She was wrong. I had already survived losing Eleanor. I could survive losing a wedding. What I could not survive was knowing my daughter had asked for help, and I had chosen appearances over her again. By 2:15, the wedding had become a stage, and only a handful of us knew the script had changed. I gathered Helen Carter, Samuel Prescott, Daniel Brooks, Dr. Jonathan Reed, Rachel, Charles Bennett, and my corporate attorney in the library. On the table lay everything we could prove. Helen's dated notebook, nearly $240,000 in transfers, security footage of Adrian entering the private document room with a legal advisor, emails showing he had invoked my name in deals I never approved, the reception papers my attorney had flagged, and Noah's 43-second recording. No theories today, I said. If we can't prove it, we don't say it. Charles nodded. My attorney brought the original emails and loan records. Daniel added, the security files are preserved with timestamps. Jonathan looked at Rachel. Anything concerning your health is discussed only with your permission. Rachel answered, you have it. I want them to understand I wasn't unstable. I was being isolated. My attorney confirmed that the reception packet contained provisions that could expand authority over family-controlled assets. I turned to Samuel. Richard Langford? Background only. Public records show estate changes and an investigation after his death, but no charges. Good. We don't turn suspicion into fact. At 2:32, Daniel's radio crackled. Vanessa was asking where I was. Adrian had tried to enter the administrative wing, but security redirected him. They're nervous, Daniel said. Let them be. I gave him final instructions. Security would protect Rachel, Noah, the guests, and the evidence, but nobody would stop Vanessa or Adrian from leaving. Then, Helen brought Eleanor's portrait from the hall. I stood before the woman who had built my life beside me. I almost let them convince me that moving forward meant forgetting what you taught me, I whispered. Rachel took my hand. Mom would have believed me. The words hurt because they were true. Then today, I do what I should have done months ago. I listen. At 2:47, the wedding coordinator knocked. Mr. Prescott, we're 12 minutes from seating the family. I straightened my jacket. Everything proceeds normally. Rachel stared at me. You're still making the entrance? The entrance, yes. The marriage, no. I asked the audiovisual technician to prepare the terrace screen for a short family video. He assumed it was a wedding surprise. Noah's original tablet stayed secured with Daniel while a verified copy was prepared. Helen would speak only about what she documented. Charles would have his records and attorney ready. Jonathan would stay within Rachel's authorization. My attorney would explain the documents. Rachel would decide whether she wanted to speak. Nobody would speak for my daughter again. At 2:55, Rachel's phone buzzed. Adrian had written, "Stop hiding with your father. You're making yourself look crazy again." She showed it to me without replying. Daniel preserved the message. Another timestamp, he said. Rachel took a breath. For the first time, I'm not afraid of what he'll say about me. Outside, 400 guests began taking their seats. Vanessa stood beyond the doors in a wedding gown, believing the most important signature of her life was minutes away. Adrian believed he had isolated Rachel so completely that nobody would trust her. I handed Noah's tablet to Daniel. When I give the signal, play all 43 seconds. Don't stop it, no matter who objects. Understood. The coordinator opened the library doors, and the processional began. I looked at Rachel. Ready? She squeezed my hand. I've been ready for months. I stepped toward the terrace, not as a groom walking toward his bride, but as a father finally walking toward the truth. Vanessa smiled when she saw me walking toward her. 400 guests rose beneath the white canopy, cameras lifted, and the string quartet faded into silence. For one final second, she looked exactly like the woman I had believed saved me from grief. Then I reached the front and turned away from the officiant. Before we begin, there's something my family needs to see. Vanessa's smile tightened. Adrian, seated near the front beside Rachel, immediately stood. William, this isn't the time. Sit down, Adrian. Something in my voice stopped him. I looked toward Daniel Brooks and nodded. The large screen behind the ceremony arch came alive. Noah's 43-second video began with a shaky view beneath Adrian's office table. Then Adrian's voice filled the terrace. Once he signs at the reception, he won't even know what he approved. A few guests gasped. Vanessa's recorded voice followed. Rachel is already isolated. Keep her uncertain. Keep William distracted. And by the time either of them understands, it'll be done. When the video ended, nobody moved. Vanessa turned toward me. William, you don't understand the context. Then you'll have plenty of opportunity to explain it to attorneys. Adrian pushed forward. That recording proves nothing. You're right, I said. 43 seconds shouldn't stand alone. Helen Carter stepped forward carrying her black notebook. She calmly described months of questions about my accounts, insurance beneficiaries, succession planning, keys, signatures, and private documents. Daniel presented preserved security records showing Adrian entering the restricted document room late at night with a legal advisor. Charles Bennett stood beside his attorney and confirmed Adrian had invoked my name and Prescott Holdings to obtain credibility for deals I never authorized. Then my corporate attorney explained that documents prepared for the reception contained provisions capable of expanding authority over family-controlled assets if executed. Vanessa's face lost its color. You were going through my things? She demanded. My accounts, I corrected. My company, my home. I held up the bank records. Nearly $240,000 moved from our joint account through repeated transfers. Counsel is tracing every dollar. Adrian looked toward the exit. Daniel didn't block him. You're free to leave, I said. But the records aren't leaving with you. Then Rachel stood. Adrian immediately snapped. Rachel, don't do this while you're emotional. The old sentence. The old weapon. This time she didn't shrink. That's what you've said every time I caught you lying. She told the guests how Adrian isolated her from friends, recorded her only after provoking arguments, and allowed Vanessa to threaten that speaking up could make people question her stability and her ability to parent Noah, Dr. Jonathan Reed spoke only with Rachel's explicit permission, confirming that her distress required support and safety, not further isolation. Vanessa turned to me. You're humiliating me because your daughter is confused. I looked at Rachel, then at Noah standing safely beside Samuel. No. I'm ending this because I was confused. I removed the wedding ring from my pocket and placed it on the table beside the unsigned documents. There will be no wedding. Vanessa stared at me. After everything I've done for you? That's exactly what we're examining. She walked away first. Adrian followed after realizing Rachel wasn't moving with him. Nobody applauded. I hadn't wanted applause. This wasn't revenge. It was the moment a lie finally ran out of places to hide. Months later, Rachel and Noah were living safely and rebuilding their lives with professional support. Attorneys and investigators handled the financial and business matters. I let evidence determine what consequences followed. Helen became head of household operations at Prescott Estate. Eleanor's portrait returned to the main hall, where it belonged. One evening, Noah stood beneath it, holding the same tablet that had changed everything. Grandpa, did my movie stop the wedding? I crouched beside him. Your movie helped me hear something I should have heard much sooner. Mommy? Your mommy. And the truth. He thought about that, then wrapped his arms around my neck. I looked past him at Eleanor's photograph and finally understood what she meant when she told me to keep living. Moving forward never meant surrendering the past or ignoring the people who loved me enough to tell me something painful. Love isn't the person who tells you exactly what you want to hear. Sometimes love is a frightened daughter trying to warn you. Sometimes it's a loyal employee keeping a notebook because you're too lonely to see clearly. And sometimes it's a 3-year-old boy walking into your wedding with 43 seconds of truth and saving an entire family before anyone can say, I do.